Alright, so this is a video response to Kenny Boy. I'm just going to go through and read the correspondence that we had back and forth, and then I'll comment on it. I haven't, it's been about a week, and I haven't even looked at this, so it's going to be a bit ad-lib. Bear with me. Alright, so Kenny Boy, I guess first off, he kind of commented on the video and said something about this, hey, I've seen this guy lose an atheist debate. And then I replied back, hey, this guy is me. Glad you enjoyed the video. Kenny Boy then says, I did, especially the whole part at the debate you got into testifying that you were hearing voices in your head, i.e. God, and started telling the skeptics in the crowd that God told you to break up with a girl and then who you should not break up with. Ha ha. It's religious logic. That makes me glad I left Mormons. And then I said back, yeah man, I'm sure you hear or feel God too. Perhaps you call him something else. Perhaps you call it intuition or an idea out of nowhere, or say it just felt right. In any case, who I call God can lead us to direct us to find happiness. It's easy to say someone is a lunatic, much harder to try and understand what they've experienced. Have you ever prayed and received answers to your prayers? And Kenny Boy responds, no, I don't hear voices in my head that tell me to break up with girls. I might have inklings based on logic, but what you said was God telling you. That a second voice out of nowhere, not a feeling generated by yourself, but from another man's whispering influence to you, i.e. voices in your head. Don't worry, man, you're kind of lucky you get an imaginary buddy for life. A lot of people buy good drugs to feel that way. I have prayed, went on a mission, and never got an answer from any outside, spiritual, invisible force. My answers came from reasoning, work, and took time, but I got answers from myself and deduced outside information. Why would God answer your questions about dating and not someone's questions about why they are living in a third world and starving or being raped daily? Why does this not help them? But when it comes to you and your important date questions, he's all over it. The point is, why does God, if real, seem so messed up? Then I responded, judging from your comments, I don't think you entirely comprehend what I was saying. To sum up your questions in 2 sentences, would they be, why does God allow bad things to happen, and why do you receive answers from God and I do not? Question mark. No, this Kenny Boy responding back. No, I do comprehend what you're saying. I watched the debate, and you stated God told you what you should do, but you shrugged it off. And what I can tell from your reply is that you refuse to answer my questions and like to answer questions with more questions. Seriously, reread your post. Not trying to be rude, but come on. Have Mormons gone this soft since I left 3 years ago? Honestly, this is a major reason I left, because people in the church shrug off your concerns or switch the tables on you by asking you if you're praying, paying tithing, reading scriptures, etc., because those in the church, a lot, believe that if you're questioning things, then you must be sinning or not doing required spiritual work. Or if you question them, then they think you're into anti-Mormon literature. But if it's anti, and it's true and backed up with history and current church teachings, I'm not talking about anti-Mormon stuff from other religions. For example, Mormon fits perfectly in the definition of a cult, except for being in a small population, but even that can be contested. As far as the world goes, they're not even percentage, and with that access to knowledge, like the internet, their numbers are dropping. And out of 14 million, how many are active? But let's address the list of being a cult, which is really every religion is. Excessive devotion. Mormons go to church 3 hours, which much of the same thing is repeated. You expect to work for the church without pay and give hours of free time, projects and meetings. And if you're a bishop, you don't see your family on Sundays. As a kid, you have to go to seminary in the mornings, unless you live in Utah, where I actually heard it can be a school credit. You serve a mission for 2 years and don't see your family the entire time, because family is apparently bad when you're on a mission. Unethical teachings. They hate gays, spend millions of tithing on stopping them from marriage, because they believe this will bring the wrath of God and threaten marriage as a whole. How this threatens them will never explain, but it's their proclamation to the family, which is a polished way of saying they are homophobic. They tell people they will go to hell and they will die and not see their children if they go against the word of God or have sex outside of marriage or drink. Never mind if you're going a good person or not. Honestly, anything that threatens people with pain after they die, not following the rules, even minor ones, not wearing garments, is unethical. They hated blacks and saw them as less and would not let them into temples until 1979, so anyone who was a part of the religion before that is a bigot. They used to touch your thigh in the temple during anointings, but they ceased that because women complained, and they used to take death oath in the temple too, pledging they would kill themselves if they revealed temple rituals. I used to think this was made up, but nope. They stopped it a few years ago. Threats and isolation. It is religion. Threats for following the rules come out with territory. If you don't believe everything, you're isolated from the temples. If you question leaders, you could face excommunication, and they employ their terms disfellowship for those that don't fall in line. If you don't pay tithing, you go to hell. It's in the Doctrine and Covenants. And not serving a mission if you're male, well, let's just say you let God down, and he may even cry a bit. Group pressures. Look above. Fear of leaving. They have you on file. Enough said. And if you leave, you forfeit your chance to go to heaven. God hates those who act on their doubts. Like you can have doubts, but keep it yourself, is what the church teaches. Didn't Smith have doubts, which became the catalyst of the church coming into existence? And those that leave are seen as those that could not endure to the end and therefore weak. And if you leave, but your kid stays and one day gets married and you want to see it, guess what? You can't because you left, therefore you have no place anymore. And if you leave, your family is still going. They are brainwashed into thinking they'll never see you again in the afterlife. Abnormal group dependency. Mormons believe the law of consecration, a class-free system where no one owns anything, everyone gives a common pot, and sounds like something they did in Russia a few years ago. Mormons hope this will one day rule the earth when Jesus comes back, and I think you need a group for this. They also baptize for dead, and Joseph Smith said we can't be saved without our dead, and they can't be saved without us. Being dependent on the dead is pretty normal. Abnormal, right? Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back. Okay, so here comes my comments. It's kind of funny because a lot of times when I read off these emails that I receive, members or non-members won't stick through the whole video and listen to the best part, which is the comments, right? So sincerely, I was trying to figure out what you were saying, what your questions were asked. We'll go back up to the main starting point of the boil over. No, I do. You said, do not. I hear voices in my head that tell me to break up with girls. I prayed on a mission, never heard an answer. If people are getting raped in a third world country, why doesn't God answer them? And he answers you. Why is he so messed up? So, essentially back to the story for those that didn't hear. Probably 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more, I was dating a girl and it was going fantastically, and I really felt impressed of what I would call by God. Felt impressed that I needed to break up with her, and I didn't want to, so I didn't listen at first. And then she kind of called and said, hey, we need to talk. And I was like, it's okay, I felt it too. And we both, really cared about each other, but we both felt this feeling inside that we just needed to break up. And so we did, kissed goodbye, and 3 days later I met who my wife is today. And I know that if I hadn't, or we hadn't listened to that prompting, that I wouldn't be married to the most beautiful woman in my life right now. So that's where he got that from, and I firmly believe that if I'm willing to listen to God, that he will, of course he would direct me to someone that could be a great wife, or someone that we can grow with together. And subsequently, some really cool things about this girl, my wife, is that both of us at the time had lost a parent within like 3 years previous, and so I was really able to help her through a lot of different things, especially with the depression that comes with losing a loved one, losing a parent. And so being able to meet at that time and help each other was really crucial, and I definitely believe that it was inspired by God. But you said, well, why does God lead you to your wife, but some people are being raped and other things? Shouldn't God help them? And all sorts of bad things happen to different people all over the world, and I can't tell you that, I can't compare my trials with their trials, or can't be in their shoes because I'm not in their shoes. But I would venture to say that anyone, even if someone's being tortured or whatever it is, they can still cry out to God and seek guidance or seek help, and I think that he'll answer them. I don't think that he withholds himself. He's not he doesn't always stop people from using their agency. If someone, decided to come in and murder me while I make this video right now, they definitely could. I don't think God's going to stop them because they have their agency to choose what they want to do. But that doesn't change the fact that God could still tell that person that not to kill me. It's his choice whether to listen or not. So yeah, bad things happen, but it's up to us to listen if we want to find a way of happiness. And even if bad things are happening to us, we can still overcome that through God and become happy internally, no matter what's happening to us externally. And as difficult as that sounds, I've met a lot of people that have been on much worse off situations than I that have been able to do this with God's help. So I said, judging your comments, I don't think you have to comprehend what I said. Are you asking why does God let bad things happen, and why do you receive answers from God and I don't? Because we kind of covered that. He says, I do comprehend what you're saying. You're trying to flip the terms on me. Just really trying to ask what your question was. Have Mormons gone this soft? Just trying not to be a jerk. So yeah, I mean, I've read tons of anti. You continue on. You talk about, if you have questions, then people think you're reading anti, or that you're not doing what's right or whatever. Of course, some people think that, but I don't know. Who cares what they think? I've read my fair share of anti literature, and I can honestly say at least 5 days out of the week, someone that's trying to anti me emails me or posts something or talks to me in one form or another. And so I've basically heard the whole gamut of anti-Mormon literature, and nothing of it, shakes my testimony. There's definitely a lot of wacky things that has happened in the church, or that maybe some person has said, a previous prophet has said even, that I don't understand, but that doesn't change my relationship with God, and that I know He's there, and that He answers my prayers, and that this church has brought me closer to Him than any other church could have. So, just because there's things I don't understand doesn't mean I'm just going to throw out the baby with the bathwater, as it was said. Say that Mormonism fits the perfect definition of cult. Said just because they have 14 million members. I don't know. Jews aren't seen as a cult. They have basically the same amount of members as Mormons do. Going to church for 3 hours, it's less common today, but it's not that bad. There's definitely a lot more excessive devotion than 3 hours of church. Sorry, not a day, once a week. And it's mostly learning. The most important part is the sacrament meeting, and most people, I don't know, from my experience, if you're making it a sacrament meeting, then it's only an hour, 15 minutes, and if you don't make it to the rest, then you're not going to get as much out of church, but you got to the most important part, so that's okay. Yeah, bishops do dedicate a lot of time. Even in my calling, there's definitely been times when, I'm expected to go out every Tuesday night for 3 hours or whatever it is to help out with missionaries, and the times when my wife has said, no, please stay home, I want you to stay home tonight, or I want you to be here with me, or I had a hard day, or whatever it is. No one has ever questioned that from the church. Like, all the church leaders, so to speak, if I tell them, oh, my wife wants me to stay home, they say, yeah, do it, stay home with your wife. Like, if she wants you there, she needs you there, then stay home with her and help out. So, while I do agree that there's definitely a lot of work to be done in the church, I've never felt so much pressure that I couldn't say no, or I couldn't say, sorry, not today. So, yeah, and going to seminary, I got school credit in seminary. Actually, it's not really school credit, but you get release time, so you get time to go out to seminary, but you don't get school credit anymore as such. You just get time during school hours to go, which I guess you do get credit in some respect. I don't really remember, actually. It's been like 6 years. Um, yeah, and not seeing your family the entire time when you're on a mission. I mean, you talk to them, email them, and I don't know. Even people now are they Facebook their family and try to teach their family while they're on their mission. So it's not that you don't entirely get to see them. It's not that your families are bad. It's just that you have one focus on a mission. The church provides for your housing, your food, your transportation. Um, Granted, you pay into a pot for that, a pool, so to speak, to help you get through the entire mission. But the church makes sure everything's taken care of, so you don't have to focus on anything else except for doing missionary work. Helps you to have an eye single to the glory of God, and it's quite a blessing. So you talked about, and this is quoting you. You said they hate gays and spend millions of tithing money stopping them from marriage, and that's a complete lie. There could be nothing further from the truth. Mormons do not hate gays. Go to mormonsandgays.org. There's nothing in the church that teaches hate. Not agreeing with someone's actions doesn't mean hate. And no tithing money was spent during Prop 8. If people donated their own money, that was their own money. But tithing money is not stopping people from marriage. And I mean, yeah, the Proclamation of the Family talks about the wrath of God thing, but I think that marriage, in the church's eyes, you got to think of, okay, well, when was the first marriage? And say, let's pretend you're a Mormon again. When was the first marriage? So that was between Adam and Eve. And what was the purpose of it? To procreate and to have children. And so the first marriage was instituted by God. And eventually, over the years, over the centuries, governments started to take upon themselves the rights to do marriages, but it was always a church thing. And so in the church's eyes, it still is a church thing, even though there's this side thing called the government that recognizes it. So in my opinion, now that government has its hands in everything, and in the marriage situation, we can't stop other people from getting married, but it doesn't also at the same time, it doesn't stop churches or anybody else that even isn't religious from voicing their opinion on what marriage should be, which is a legal binding contract between a man and a woman. And so I know I'm not trying to use the whole procreation reason, because elderly people and couples that decide not to have children or sterile couples can still get married. That's not what my point is. My point is that marriage that was just the definition. And so if you change the definition, then that's what gets people up in a hubbub. But in my view, because government has taken on the role to do marriage, then there shouldn't be any reason why gay people can't be married. The major question then would be, in the church's eyes, would then be marriage in the temple. What is the purpose of that? And so then you go a little bit further, where we believe that you can have your children in their life after this, and if your body isn't physically capable of creating more children, then you're just going to be stuck in the afterlife not being able to create more children. And so, yeah, should people be forced to believe what other people believe? No. But are people free to express what they believe? Yes. So we'll see. I think it's inevitable. I think the United States government will, I guess, force gay marriage or allow gay marriage on every state within the next, I don't know, probably by 2016. I think every state will have that. And then the question comes of, will churches be obligated to marry people in the temple? And we'll see. That brings up a whole new can of worms. So, continuing on with your letter, you said, polished way of saying we're homophobic. And no, we're not homophobic. I have tons of gay friends, a lot of gay friends. I went into a gay store, what was it, Friday night, to look at some sweet shoes, some great shoes at that store. The store was called Cockers. It's in downtown Salt Lake. And you have to go sometime. But yeah, I have a lot of gay friends, and um, some of the gay couples that I know would make better parents than some of the straight couples that I know, and there's nothing hidden about that. And so I'm not homophobic, um, but I I do know that there's also extra blessings with the power of procreation and creating children eternally, which is really cool idea. Even just seeing like the joy of having my own child is like that's amazing. And so and the whole well, why did God make people gay question. So there's a whole nother video we could do and probably will do. So wait for that. Okay, so this video is getting really long. I apologize if you're not hanging on with me, but it's for you, buddy. I also tell people if they go to hell, if they do not see and will not see their children, if they go against the word or have sex outside of marriage or drink, never mind if you're a good person or not. Again, this is completely false. I don't know what church you went to that told you, I don't know what Mormon church you went to that told you you were going to go to hell, because hell isn't even a teaching in the Mormon church. There's spirit prison, but that's just a temporary thing. And then there's outer darkness, but there's only like a handful of people that will even qualify to make it there. So hell in Mormonism isn't really a choice, isn't really an option. Like everything that people on earth will get to for like 99.99999% is better than the life we live right now. And Joseph Smith even said that if you knew how good the celestial kingdom, which is the lowest kingdom in Mormon theology, if you knew how good the celestial kingdom is, you would kill yourself just to get there. So essentially, everything that happens after this life is going to be better. And so telling people that they're going to go to hell if they do those things isn't true. They might not make it to the celestial kingdom, but that's not the same as hell. And so, and not see their children, and that's a lie too. You can, in Mormon theology, you can see other people that you knew in this life. Essentially, the way that the teaching goes is if you make it to there's three different kingdoms. There's the celestial, terrestrial, and telestial. If you make it to the celestial, you can go down and visit anyone in the lower two. If you make it to the terrestrial, you can go down and visit the one in telestial, and if you make telestial, you don't get to go up and visit anybody, but they can come visit you. So the whole thing about never seeing them again isn't true. They can always come see you if you don't make it up there. I don't know if that helps any, but just dispel that. Honestly, things that threaten people, this is back to your, honestly, anything that threatens people that die after they die for not following rules, even minor ones like not wearing garments and unethical. Okay. They hated blacks and saw them as less and would not live in the temples until 1979. And that's not true either. There was multiple black people that were ordained and went to temples during the time of Joseph Smith. And so what happened then? I don't know. You can go and Google. The church released a big, long paper, and I'll probably put it in the description, but it kind of explained the whole blacks in the priesthood and essentially said it was more of a product of its time. And from the research that I did, and I talked on this a little bit earlier, essentially there was, I forget his name, but there was a black male marrying multiple wives in one of the temples. And when Brigham Young heard about that, he then instituted the priesthood ban. And so I think that was more of like a cultural thing at the time, where interracial marriage in the 1800s was like super crazy no-no. And I don't think that it wouldn't have been just the pressures of like church members that was a no-no, but even like outside groups and just like anyone else in society, like that's something that you could get killed over. And so perhaps Brigham Young thought he was protecting people by not allowing them to interracial marriage, and that was the way that he fixed it. Or maybe he was racist and a product of his time, which many people think, but I don't think that disqualifies disqualifies him as a prophet. We all have shortcomings and failures, and I'm sure that, even the things that I think culturally are right now could be wrong, and maybe God's trying to tell me that they are wrong, but I'm just choosing not to listen right now. So we'll see. I can't tell you the whole story on that because I wasn't there in the 1800s, but again, Mormons didn't hate blacks, and I'm glad that they can enjoy every blessing, including the temple. They were always welcome in the church, and there were always black members at church, so saying that they hated them is way too harsh. I mean, even in the olden days when only Jews were allowed to have the priesthood, no one else but a Jew was allowed to have the priesthood. And was that because Jews hated everyone else, or was that just because that's what God said and they did it? And that's the reason why, because they were told that that's what they should do, and so they didn't give the priesthood to anyone else. And so it didn't have anything to do with hate, it just had to do with what they were told. So there's tons of different logical reasons, but the simplest reason was down to racism of the time, and people just assumed that it was scripture, but really it was just a policy. So, and it was never more strict than that. So go read it. I'll link it below. It's a good document. Used to touch her thigh during the temple anointings, but they ceased that because women complained. Used to take death oaths in the temple too. Yeah, so there's different things that have changed in the temple, and how many Mormons have you heard that killed themselves because they told something about the temple? 0. So obviously the whole death threat thing isn't referring to literally you're going to go kill yourself or something. It's more of a figurative spiritual death. That's everything that is in the temple is talking about figurative and spiritual. It's basically saying that, if you go and talk about super spiritual things to people outside in the regular world, or be flippant with it, then it's just like committing spiritual suicide, essentially, is the vibe that I've got from all my studies. Yeah, so no, I've never heard of any Mormons that, pre-1990, that what you're talking about was pre-1990, that have killed themselves because they talked about the temple. It's just silly. That's not what it is meant. What was meant is, if you're not careful with the things that God gives you, then they'll be taken away. That's as simple as it is. Yeah, and so they said that they stopped it a few years ago. That was over 20 years ago, not a few years ago. Anyways, threats and isolation. Religion said that they believe that you're isolated. If you don't believe everything, you're isolated from the temple. If you question leaders, you're excommunicated or disfellowshipped. If you don't fall in line, if you don't pay tithing, you go to hell. It's Doctrine and Covenants. Don't serve a mission if you're male. Let's say God won't be happy. So, well, women serve missions too. That's since 3 years ago. My little baby sister's on a mission. So in Mormonism, let's say you're a fully active member, and then you decide to go, have a super fun weekend in Vegas, get some prostitutes, get drunk, do some crack, cocaine, whatever it is, and you come back and talk to the bishop. Bishop's going to be like, "What? Let's put you on some disfellowship right now. We're gonna stop you from taking tithe. We're gonna stop you from taking the sacrament. And when you're excommunicated, they don't even allow you to pay tithing. They don't accept money from you if you're excommunicated, because it's not something that you're ready to do. Or if you're not baptized, they don't accept tithing. But essentially, the only reason why excommunication or disfellowship is put in place, it isn't as much of a punishment as it is allowing you to feel the severity of what you've done, so that you can decide if you want to live the covenants which you've made. Because if you break the promises you made with God, then you're held at a lot higher condemnation. It's kind of like, I don't know, let's say your parents, right? They tell you, you ask them, or you have this choice. You want to go out on a date on the Friday night or whatever it is, and so you said, "Oh, I'm going to take Dad's car on a date." And so you have two options. You can either ask Dad or just use it. And so let's say you just use it and you come back, and then Dad gets really mad at you. And then let's say you go to ask Dad, and he says, "No, you can't use it," and then you use it anyway. Is Dad going to be more mad at you the first time or the second time of when he already told you no? He's going to be more mad at you the second time when he already told you no. And so the same thing with baptism is you promise to follow God and you promise to obey His commandments. And so if you don't do it, then you're at a lot higher of a condemnation or punishment. And so that's the same reason why disfellowship or excommunication happens, is it basically cuts off that promise. Disfellowship cuts off the promise for a time, and excommunication cuts it off until you completely choose to come back and follow God again. And so it's not as a punishment for you as much as it is so that you're not held in high of condemnation when you continue to sin or act in the ways that would be worse off for you in the eyes of God. And so you shouldn't look at those things as a punishment as much as it is protecting you from harsher punishment. And again, the whole thing with the hell thing, hell in Mormonism isn't the same as what most people consider hell. Most people talk about hell in Mormonism. It's the spirit prison, which goes away once the resurrection happens. Okay, we're almost done. Only 2 more paragraphs. Fear of leaving. They have you on file. If you leave, you forfeit your chance to go to heaven. God hates those who don't act their doubts. Didn't Joe Smith have doubts? You said no place anymore. If your family's gonna... Okay, and if your kid one day gets married, guess what? You can't see... Okay. So, again, you don't forfeit your chance to go to heaven. You might forfeit your chance to go to the celestial kingdom, but there's still a glory of heaven that's waiting for you. I don't think God hates anyone. Joseph Smith did have questions, and it's important to act on your questions, and he went and asked God. And so that's the key thing, is if you have questions, it's important to ask God. And if you have more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Many of them I won't be able to answer, and I'll probably say, go pray and ask God. And I really do sincerely believe that He'll answer you, as long as you have the sincere heart, real intent, faith in Christ. 3 things. Sincerely really want to know. Real intent means no matter what the answer is, you'll do it. So if God said, yeah, you really need to go back and be rebaptized, or you need to go back and take the sacrament this Sunday, no matter what it is, no matter what pride there is, you'd have to set that aside and say, okay, God, I'll do whatever you ask. And you have to have faith in Christ. So those are the 3 things that have led me to receive answers from God, and are promised in the Book of Mormon, that those are the ways that you can receive answers from God. And same thing with the Book of James, chapter 1, verse 5, gives the same formula. We talked about if your kid stays in the church and gets married, your parents can't come. So me and my wife, we got married, and there were so many people, like half the people I know don't go to church or aren't members, or half my friends, which in Utah, it's, Salt Lake's like 50-50 of Mormons and non-Mormons, and like you said, probably another 50% of the Mormons that go to church. But so there was a ton of people that wouldn't be able to come to the temple for reasons of space, because there's only like 30 seats in there, and then also reasons of not being members. And so what my wife and I did is we had a ring ceremony afterwards, to kind of bring all the people that weren't Mormons to the ring ceremony and let them feel a part of our marriage. And so, even in a lot of other countries, like in England, you get married first, civilly, outside, with your parents, family, whoever's there, and then you get married in the temple, the next day or something. And that was actually the way that it used to be done in like the olden church. And I think that I believe that that's just a policy thing. So I'm sure that there's different ways that you could figure out to make it work, where you could either do a ring ceremony after you're sealing, or if you're in England, you get married first and sealed later. I'm sure that there's different things that you can talk to the temple president or your bishop about and try to figure something out. They might they might not be familiar with that kind of thing, so you might have to educate them or help them to understand that that's just a policy and not a doctrine. But yeah, it's okay to get married with your family there and then sealed just with your Mormon friends, because obviously people that aren't Mormon don't see the sealing as meaning much anyway. It's just kind of, okay, that's your religious thing, then you go do that. That's fine. You believe it, go ahead. Brainwashed into thinking that you'll never see you again in the afterlife. Okay, so you're, again, back to the never see you again thing. That's not true. They'll still see you again. They'll come down and see you, or you can go see them, or you can come down, or you can be in the celestial kingdom if you choose. That's what you want to be. You can be there. Abnormal group dependency. You talked about Mormons and the law of consecration. So, yeah, we don't practice the law of consecration, but it would definitely be really cool. I think it would be cool if, I mean, you talked about Russia a few years ago. So Russia practices communism, or socialism is what you're referring to, and absolutely pure socialism would be great. Unfortunately, we all have, every person, even I, right? I'm the one talking about it. I'm greedy, and we want a fair share of whatever we put in, we get out. And so, because there's market inefficiencies and greedy people on the world, or just different, even geographical regions that are just different, it makes a lot of disparity. But if you had pure socialism where everyone was able to work hard, and that's the key thing, is that everyone does their hardest or does their best, right? Then everyone is rewarded equally. And if everyone did that, then it would work. But the problem where we have in society today, and this is getting all political and stuff, is when people, I guess, choose to take advantage of other people, and as soon as you get greed into like a socialist economy, it doesn't work anymore. It's completely flawed. And so yeah, if Jesus Christ was here and he was running everything, then I'm sure everything would be perfect. But until then, we just gotta live our lives, and tithing's the way to go. There's actually a pretty cool story, and this is what I'll close on, is there actually was a little town, oh, what was it called? I know it was founded by a Bowers, that was the founder's name, but it was in southern Utah. I believe it was near Helper, but anyways. So they actually practiced the law of consecration, where everyone kind of just pooled all their money together, pooled all their resources together, and they made their own clothes, they made their own houses, and everyone just worked together, and it was great. They didn't have any kind of monetary system. They just helped each other, and everyone took part. And then these two boys, they went over the mountain, and they found the city next door and saw that they had these Levi jeans, and so they put those on and took them back to the town, and now they were all of a sudden very different than the rest of the town, and actually killed the law of consecration in that town, because people were like, oh, I want those, or I want to have some jeans myself. And so that was kind of an interesting thing of how things like that can ruin the perfect little worlds. But anyways, that was super long. It's probably been like 20 or 30 minutes. I don't even know. I can check right here. Yeah, 40 minutes. Sorry. But really, God does love you. I know He does. I felt His love for me, and I hope I've answered a couple of your questions. I'm very, again, I didn't think about this too much beforehand, or otherwise the video would have only been like 10 minutes instead of 40 minutes. But God does love you, and I'm imperfect, so many of these things that I've said are probably imperfect. If you have more questions on them, we can talk about them too. Just add them in the comments below, and we'll keep pressing forward. Say your prayers tonight. Ask God for guidance and assistance, and if you do so, He'll help you. Peace.